the Commissioner of the State of Louisiana, Mr. Jay Dardenne, a virtual co-host on this program over the last week to 10 days. And Mr. Jay, welcome back to KEEL once again. Thank you for taking time for us.
Sure. Nice to be with y'all this morning.
So special session starts. Well, let's go back a little bit and sort of tie these two together. So the governor on Friday vetoed the budget that came, I guess, out of the Senate. And the special session starts tomorrow. So in the governor's mind, in your mind, if X, Y, or Z doesn't happen, we're kind of screwed. What has to happen to save us?
Well, we have to raise some revenue. It's pretty obvious by the two budgets that were passed, one in the House and one in the Senate, that the legislature is unable or unwilling to make the cuts that are reasonable to try and balance this budget. And so the obvious result is that we need additional revenue to make things work. And the governor has asked for $648 million in new revenue, which is well over $400 million less than what people are paying right now. So the revenue the governor is asking for as a replacement to the temporary taxes is actually less than what people have been paying, and that's often lost in this discussion. But if that money is not raised, there are going to be serious cuts that were evidenced by these two budgets that were passed. The House totally eviscerated health care. The Senate came back and restored health care, but showed what it had to do in order to do that, and it resulted in a dramatic cut to higher education, a further reduction in TOPS, and a basically 24% cut to everything else in government, which in many cases is a shutdown of government services.
Mr. Jay, at least you just used the term new revenue. At least you're calling it that and not sugarcoating it with terms like revenue retention, or you see the point I'm making? I mean, at least you came up and said new revenue.
This is what it is.
But I've often also said that's replacement revenue, because that's really what it is. The temporary taxes that were imposed 25 or so months ago were designed to be temporary, and they expire on June 30th. And so, excuse me, a portion of that is what has to be retained or renewed or created by way of a new tax in order to make up the difference of what's going off the books. And again, it's important to remember it's not nearly as much as people are paying right now.
Do you expect these that the lawmakers do approve beginning tomorrow to be permanent? Do these need to be permanent? And let's not call it, let's say, sorry, folks, this is going to have to stay on the books.
Aaron, they need to be permanent. And the governor's said that repeatedly, and I've said it as well, that we got to quit lurching from year to year with these temporary taxes. It's what got us in trouble decades ago when the Stelly plan eventually passed, because we needed to end those temporary taxes that were hurting us with our bond ratings. And just created this situation every few years where legislators were having to have this same debate. Do we keep the tax base that we have, or do we let it roll off? So these taxes need to be permanent. Now, permanent is by definition until the legislature changes things. So at some point in the future, the legislature or the people with a constitutional change could make changes, but we ought not put an end date on this, because we see what happens when we put an end date. The situation we're in right now, where we've had all these special sessions and two regular sessions, the legislature has not done anything to replace this revenue, and here we are with yet another special session.
I'm going to ask you that the first special session before this regular one, I mean, it was a mess. A lot of people say a waste of money. What's going to be different this time?
I think reality is going to be different. People recognize that the cliff is about to hit on June 30th, and the legislature now has had this entire regular session to make cuts. Those who have come on your show and said we need to fix this by cutting the budget proved that they were unable to do so, because you look at the magnitude of the cuts that were totally unacceptable from both versions, and that tells you that you simply, what we've been saying all along, you can't make these cuts easily with this kind of money. You're getting into the meat of what government is responsible for doing, either providing health care, TOPS coverage, or investment in higher education, or some of the basic governmental services that are provided. These two budgets, particularly the one that the governor vetoed, are evidence, Exhibit A, that you can't cut your way out of this problem. You have to replace some of this revenue.
So how are is the governor going to sell that to the people of Louisiana, that we need more of your money? How do you sell a tax increase to the people of the state?
But once again, you need less of the money that they're paying right now. But you do it by showing what this budget look like. I think either of these budgets are going to be totally unacceptable to the people of this state. Even the most conservative people in the state would recognize, I think, that we have to provide basic health care. We have to maintain our public-private partnerships with the hospitals. We want to fund TOPS. We don't want to go backwards on what we've been doing for higher education. This is the first year, the year we're in right now is the first year in a decade that we have not cut higher education and we fully funded TOPS. We need to continue that, to right-size higher education and make certain that we're not going to go backwards in our competition with other states for the best students out there. We don't want our students, we don't want our medical students going to school in other states and not staying in Louisiana.
This is not a governor who has been reticent to, let's say, suggest things to the state legislature. What is the governor's fix? If he could write the plan and pass it along, what does he favor?
Well, he will have a plan, and the plan will raise the money that we need. It'll reduce the sales tax, that fifth penny, by half a penny, go to a half cent on that fifth penny instead of the full penny, eliminate a number of exemptions and credits that have been on the books for quite some time, eliminate what's called the double deduction, which is the only thing that will be addressed relative to income tax. And that will say that whatever you paid in your state income tax last year, you can't deduct it on this year's tax return. That just makes complete sense. It would make us consistent with what most states in America do, and that's the only component of income tax that the governor is going to suggest. And then we're going to make additional cuts. I mean, we've made more than $600 million in cuts. We're going to make more cuts. Which is what we've said all along, that even if we raise the $648 million, we're going to be making significant cuts overall in the state budget.
Jay, I'm looking at a report that says, and I'm quoting, in 2016, lawmakers agreed to the temporary fixes as a bridge to broader structural overhaul from cuts and smarter tax policies. But nothing has been implemented. 2 years, and now it looks like, 6 special sessions later. Why did we not get this job done during the 2 years while these temporary taxes were on the books? That's what a lot of us want to know.
Well, you're going to have to ask legislators that question, particularly those who balked at every opportunity to enact some tax reform. The task force that we've talked about repeatedly over the course of the past year and a half made a lengthy series of recommendations that were designed to be the best practices in other states and to really change our overall tax structure in Louisiana. Some of those proposals are incorporated in what the governor is suggesting. Others related to the income tax just have not been met with any favor at all with the House of Representatives, which has to start any tax legislation on their side. So despite all these sessions, despite what this bipartisan independent task force recommended, the House has basically said we don't want to fool with that. And that's what's gotten us into this position right now, and it's what is leading us to say, well, we're going to have to at least retain a half of that fifth penny to make things work.